Overrated or underrated? The pump.
Overrated.
Overrated.
You know why?
Why?
Because it fades away. So
Uh-huh.
if the pump, let's say you worked out and stayed for 24 hours,
Yep.
that'd be awesome. But you're pumped in the gym and then it fades away. Overrated.
I mean, you do know one person who would disagree with you, right?
Yeah. Peach.
That's not who I had in mind. You know where I'm going with that?
Arnold.
Arnold, of course.
Yeah, Arnold. Didn't
Arnold.
he say later on he just did it for
Oh,
the
I'm sure.
movie?
I
Like
feel like
he's
I feel like half the shit he did in Pumping Iron was he just was doing it to try to get, you know,
it was
try to get
probably
some attention.
his personality on another level to
Yeah.
where it like created the character of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because
Yeah.
again, being pumped from the gym looks cool, it feels cool, you feel bigger, but it's like it's not really doing anything and it fades away. So
Well, I always thought I'm like, you know what, man, you know what it must be? It must be the steroids that
that's
make
true.
pumps that great.
That's true. Maybe the pump Arnold and others were experiencing is different than the pump I'm experiencing.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It has to be.
Maybe
Um,
it's different.
yeah. So, but to yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing. I think it's overrated because I don't know. I just feel like it gets too much validation for I
Mm-hmm.
got a good pump,
Right.
or kind of on the flip side, people will say, well, I didn't get a pump. Must be my the exercise wasn't effective or my
Mm-hmm.
workout wasn't
Mm-hmm.
effective. And it's like no, that's not necessarily the
Well,
case.
and I use the argument I could take a 10-pound dumbbell and do a bunch of curls and get a bicep pump. That
Yep.
doesn't necessarily mean that I created a growth stimulus for my biceps. I just
Yep.
put blood flow into the area.
It's a lot like soreness. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like it's not to say that getting a good pump is somehow bad. No, I mean a lot of times it's actually kind of the other way around in a certain sense. Like if you actually get a good pump while doing an exercise that also overloads the muscle, well, that's a good thing. As the cat's attacking my fucking arm.
Cats, overrated or underrated?
I would say underrated, but right now my
Yeah.
tone's gonna change. Um, but yeah, the pump. Yeah, it now people to play devil's advocate here, people would say, well, what about cell swelling?
I would say the sarcoplasmic hypertrophy
Mm-hmm.
cell swelling effects, actual effect on muscle growth is so much smaller than the myofibril
Yeah.
hypertrophy. Again, not saying it's not beneficial, it doesn't have an impact, but you're adding actual contractile protein to your muscles is going to be far more important than a pump or sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and
Yeah.
cell swelling and all that. But
Yeah. Cell
it does
swelling.
play a role in
Yeah.
hypertrophy.
But way further down than just
Right.
mechanical tension.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
yeah. So yeah, the pump, we both agree.
Overrated.
Overrated.
Arnold's like, oh, I'm
He's
just
done.
turning this podcast off.
He's not listening anymore because of that. So I mean, I had him scheduled for a guest next week, but
Mm.
we ruined that. All right. So number two, second thing, slow tempo training. Now we can talk about this in a
Yeah,
bodybuilding and powerlifting standpoint.
to see like that one, it made me take a second because I went through all the scenarios in
I
my
know
head.
I put a few of them. There's a lot of these are kind of this way.
I'm gonna say underrated.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why, when I specifically think of this, is I'm thinking about like tempo squats and things like
Yep.
that, to where they're very beneficial for teaching someone how to maintain proper positioning during a squat, or if you have an injury you're trying to work around. It's very easy to be like, oh, I just can't squat. I'm just not going to do squats at all. But if like, oh, but if I do tempo squats and use 50 to 60% of the weight I was using, I can still practice this movement. I can still get the squat stimulus in and work around the pain. But I feel like until recently, until the last couple of years, tempo training was not viewed in that way. It was kind of more of just like the make the eccentric movement longer to create more muscle damage and soreness.
Yep.
So that I don't promote tempo training for that. I promote it to like working on form, technical form issues, working around injuries. So I think it is beneficial for that.
Yeah, man, like doing like a slow eccentric on a squat is great for bar path too. But I
Right.
like what you said with injuries. I think it's easy for especially on a squat, but really any movement where you experience pain, and your first thought is, oh, I can't squat anymore.
Hmm.
You have a little bit of pain and it's like, I can't squat anymore. It's like, okay, well, maybe, but here's a couple things you could try. One, just lower the weight, slow the eccentric, slow the tempo down. Okay, if that still experiences pain, okay, well, let's adjust range of motion. It's like weight, tempo, range of motion. Usually right there, now you can squat a little bit. At that point, you still can't squat. It's like, okay, well, let's just take out all load. Let's just do body weight. Can you do that? You can do that. Okay, well, now let's reverse engineer. Okay, can you hold a dumbbell? So it's just kind of, I'm speaking in terms of, that's probably one reason why I would like tempos, is just a lot of times you can just slow down a tempo with lighter weight, and now you can do it now. It's because
Yeah.
it's self
Yeah.
limiting in
Yeah.
terms of weight.
No, I agree. So yeah, I stand by underrated because I still don't feel like it's used outside of the powerlifting realm for
Yep.
those reasons, you know.
Yep. 100%. Now, in terms of building muscle, I'll say overrated.
Yeah, because again, I remember years ago, the very, very slow eccentric was promoted to create more mechanical tension and damage.
Yep.
And it's like, I don't really think that's something you need to focus on. I don't think that's going to create significant progress above just lifting the weight normally.
Yeah. Now, I will say, I do think there's something to having extra control of the weight, but there's a difference. You don't necessarily have to do like a super slow eccentric to have control, but you should
Hmm.
control the eccentric.
Yeah, yeah.
I always think of like pull-ups. I know we've talked about this before, but like a pull-up, perfect example. Like, man, you have to control your body on the weight, but part of that's just gravity. Like, you
Hmm.
can just let yourself fall down, or you can control your weight on the way down, which will kind of, slow down the tempo a little bit. That's important, but
Hmm.
you don't have to, lower yourself in 5 seconds or something.
No, I would say back movements are the ones that typically
Mhm.
the eccentric is just let the bar go to the ground or just let the
Yep.
pulley go up high fast. It's not really controlled. So there's definitely a difference between controlling an eccentric and just letting the equipment go back to the starting point.
Hmm. Now with bench press, it's a delicate balance with bench press, because some people, they control it too much, and it's
Hmm.
like, oh, you just turned that into I'm talking about for strength. It's like,
Right.
man, you just controlled that too much, and then you literally did like a slow negative, paused it, and then pressed it, and you're wondering why you can't get stronger. But
For
then
the one rep,
other people just drop it on their chest too.
yes, yeah. For like a one rep max weight, there's definitely
Yeah,
that fine line
it's a
of
fine line.
too slow. It's like you're too slow. You're not gonna be able to press it once you get to the bottom, and
Yep,
then too fast is like you dropped it so fast. Any tension you had built up is
is
gone.
gone. All right, number three. Here's a fun one. Flexible dieting.
My initial reaction is to say overrated.
Hmm.
Reason why is people have taken it so far on the one extreme that they're not actually eating healthy, nutrient dense food. They're just trying to fit everything in. But when it all is said and done, it's like the bulk of your diet should still be your lean proteins, your complex carbs, your healthy fats, and all fruits and vegetables. So it shouldn't be just about fitting anything you can into your diet that hits macros. So that's why I say overrated. I think it went too far
Yep.
in making everything work instead of being an actual healthy, balanced diet.
Yeah, that's why I said flexible dieting and not tracking your macros.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, initially my thought was, when I thought about it, I was like, I think I'm going to say that it's overrated, because people got so caught up in the fact that, oh, you can just eat whatever you
Eat
want with
anything.
tracking
Yeah.
macros, and then that's flexible dieting, and you got down a rabbit hole to where you just your diet wasn't very good, and it
Right.
was, you almost just said, oh, but I'm flexible dieting. Now mainstream, I think you could make an argument that mainstream, it's probably, underrated, because I do think a lot of people in mainstream audiences probably don't know as much about flexible dieting as they should.
Yeah, I would say mainstream definitely underrated because mainstream people who aren't deeply involved in the fitness industry still think they can't eat certain foods at all.
Yep. Yep.
Like a cookie, if I have one cookie, my diet's ruined.
Yep.
Versus if they're like, okay, my diet's been on point most of the time, and I want to eat these two cookies, I can fit them in and make it work.
Yep.
So that I mean, but I feel like that was the whole point of flexible dieting.
That's what it was. That's how it
So
started.
when flexible dieting first started coming out, it was around the time where everyone was just on meal plans. to where
Yep.
everyone was eating. You have to eat the same food every day for the same meals, blah blah blah. And then it was kind of like, well, you can eat chicken or turkey or steak for this meal. It doesn't have to be one specific thing. And it's like you can eat rice or potato or Ezekiel bread or rice cakes, whatever it may be. So it kind of was like, okay, we can work different foods in as long as we hit these macros. And then it was like, okay, I can work in this whole box of cookies because it fits my macros, and I'll just have a protein shake with the cookies, which from time to time is fine. But if you're making that like a daily occurrence to where the bulk of your carbohydrates is coming from refined processed cookies that have no nutritional value, no vitamins, no minerals, no fiber, no real satiation, probably not the easiest to digest, then it's like, okay, that's outside the realm of what is actually optimal or healthy.
Yeah. And you had to have been there to understand the context because seriously, it was a response to people eating on strict meal plans. And back then, it was a real question. Now, if your meal plan, if meal two was 5 ounces of chicken breast, a cup of rice, and broccoli, anything other than that was a question. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Like
Can I
I don't
sub
know.
in
I'm
green?
out of brown rice.
Right.
What do
What
I
should I
do?
do? Yeah. I don't have broccoli. Can I sub in green beans?
Yeah,
No, the meal plan says broccoli. You
sure.
gotta eat
You're like, I'm
broccoli.
out of chicken. I don't, I mean, I
What?
have 96% lean ground beef, but I don't know if I can I have ground beef on this
Mm-hmm,
meal plan?
mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to add fat to it, but I don't know. I'm supposed to have almonds.
I
I don't
remember
know,
a,
man.
a discussion I had with a guy whose his meal plan called for almonds in one of his meals. And he's like, I just swallow the almonds whole because I don't like them. And I'm like, dude, like you can eat something else. You don't have to eat almonds. He's like, but the meal
Swallow them
plan,
whole. Oh my.
yes, almonds. He's like, but the meal plan calls for almonds. So it was seriously almost like a disordered eating to where people were so tunnel vision focused on this
Mhm.
meal plan, they didn't know how to deviate from it. Or like you said, say they were at a point where like, oh, supposed to eat these foods, but I don't have those foods available.
Yeah.
But I have other foods that could work, but I just can't work them into the meal plan. So
Yep.
it started off just like working in different foods, and it snowballed into people no longer eating what would be considered again a healthy balanced diet with a variety of sources of foods, fruits and vegetables, to just eating junk food, but it hit these certain macro numbers, so it was okay. And
Yep.
again, some is fine, but not when the majority of your calories come from junk food.
And then what people realize, it's just very, very hard to be consistent when every day is a blank slate. When
Mm-hmm.
you have no consistency in your meal schedule or even foods that you're eating, it's hard to replicate.
Yes. So even for myself, and I do implement flexible dieting, like 2 to 3 of my 4 meals per day are usually the same just because it makes it easier.
Yep.
And then my dinner meal might vary each day or my lunch meal may vary each day just so I have some variety. But yeah, if you wake up in the morning and you say, "Oh, I have 2,500 calories with these macros, what am I going to eat?" You may start just eating food to hit the numbers to fill in the blanks type of thing instead of actually planning a well thought out diet where your meals again have fruits and vegetables and fiber and are filling so you don't overeat later on in the day. So it became what could have been a structured diet to a very unstructured loose diet.
Yep. Well, again, and there was also a pushback to people, and this still happens, that promote almost like fear-based nutrition. So it's like, oh man, you
Mm-hmm.
can't. Well, even like with like the carnivore people, it's like, oh man, you can't vegetables, anti-nutrients, man. You can't even be eating. Oh, it's a high food map food. I don't know how you're gonna digest anything after
Mm-hmm.
eating broccoli. You're eating broccoli. That's one of the worst high food map foods you can eat. I don't. Can you digest food after that? Like,
Yeah.
and so flexible dieting was. Now, mind you, I'm exaggerating, but again, like the clean eating crowd was. It was basically like, hey, you had a list of foods that were good. Now, a lot of times you had them in a meal plan, so they were measured and everything. That you pretty much couldn't deviate that. But let's even say that you know, were beyond that. You're like, okay, well, I'm not necessarily following a meal plan. I'm just eating clean. But it was like you had your list of like 15 foods that you ate, and you're like, anything
Mm-hmm.
else outside of that, it's like, dude, I can't do it. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So that's what we always say, like the how to diet, like how to get lean, how to get bigger is
Mhm.
easy, but to actually implement it long term is what's hard because
Yeah.
there's so many different thoughts on, like you said, like what foods are good, what foods are bad, what strategy is the best. And it does typically, the overriding theme is your calorie intake and your total macro intake. And then the foods are kind of just filling in the smaller detail, but those smaller details become important over the long term.
All right, number 4. Here's another one. Warming up.
The people that know what they're doing do it well, but I see
Mhm.
so many people just walk into the gym and don't warm up and just throw like
Yeah.
225 on a bench and start benching, and I'm like, oh, my joints. So I this is like the one I'm going to use my neutral card and be like, I'm
Uh,
neutral on that, because
yeah.
I because I've seen it go both ways, where people warm up too much, spend 45 minutes doing mobility,
Yep.
and then work out. And then you see some people that don't warm up at all. So I was, my statement would just be warming up is important.
Yeah. All right. All right. I'll go out on a limb here. This is what I'll say. And again, I'm kind of splitting it up, so people might get mad. I'm changing the game here, but I'm willing to say this. I think this is still going out on a limb. I think warming up on the actual exercises, so like warm up sets, are underrated, because even people who do it, I don't think do it well enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think almost all other warming up is overrated. I'm not saying worthless. I'm saying it's overrated. And I'm saying the barbell warm ups are underrated. And why I think they're, well, I've seen people like, dude, so my gym has a physical therapy spot inside of the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, I thought like physical therapists, like they're pretty well educated. There's a dude who's a physical therapist there. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast, but I saw him one day. He did exactly what you said. He walked into the gym and put 225 on the bar and started benching. And I'm like, dude, he's a physical therapist. And he walked right in cold and benched. And dude was not like, he was strong. Right? He's a strong guy, but not that strong. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't do that. And I bench considerably more than he does. I mean, he probably benches, I don't know, if I had to guess, he definitely can bench over 315, because he worked up to like 275 for sets of, probably like 6 or something. So he could probably
Mm-hmm.
bench like 325 maybe. But yeah, the working weight he was going to do was 275. He walked in, did 225 for a couple reps, did 275 for like his working sets. And I'm like, dang, like, I don't know. That's risky. He must have, and it wasn't a lack of time, because he did a bunch of other things too. So it wasn't like, hey,
Yeah.
he had 15 minutes to bench. And then I could maybe say, hey, that, do what you gotta do. But um I just think, man, I feel like there's just, even, and we talked about this before with squats. And maybe this is just me, but over what I've done over the last like year is just taking my time a little bit more with doing just barbell warm up sets. Now, mind you, I used to do a lot of other warming up for squats. I would do a lot of mobility stuff that I thought helped. But now I pretty much go in, do 5 minutes on the bike, and then get right to the bar, and I'll just milk it. Like I'll do a set or two with just the bar, a set or two with 135, a set or two with 185, a set or two with 225, just whatever I need. So it might be a considerable amount of time before I get to 225 even on squats. But then by the time I get to 225, I've done already so many warm up sets. Like I'm feeling good at that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So but it's a trade-off. I've cut out a lot of the other shit. Like I don't really do hardly any mobility stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if an issue came up, I would, but as long as I'm feeling good, I've, haven't really needed to do it. I do 5 minutes on the bike and get right to the barbell.
Yeah.
So again, not saying all the other stuff isn't important and not couldn't be beneficial, but that's my stance. I'll say I think that the other stuff's overrated. The barbell warm-ups underrated.
Yeah. So when I did the Max OT program back in the day,
Mhm.
they were so big on like the extended warm-ups building up to the weight. So that's how I've always approached the first
Yeah.
exercise, like your heaviest exercise.
Yep.
So let's say I'm doing bench press. I'll have a lot of sets that build up to the weights I'm going to use. And then let's say I'm doing incline dumbbell press as my second exercise. And let's say I'm going to do 100-pound dumbbells.
Yep.
I'll still do a warm-up set with like 60s or,
Yep. I'll do like
something.
one.
Yeah, just to like kind of warm up that movement pattern versus just jumping directly into the 100-pound set.
Yep.
So I'm definitely a fan of warming up with the movement you're going to perform more so than other stuff.
Yep. I would have answered this differently a couple years ago, maybe even a year ago.
No, there was a time period I was really big into the mobility board work prior to working
Yep.
out. And maybe it helped at the time, maybe it didn't, but at the time I thought it was
Well,
necessary.
I think it helped me, but I think there might even be a little bit of a placebo because I thought it helped me. Like
Hmm.
mentally, I'm like, oh, I need to do this
Yeah,
because if
yeah.
I wouldn't do it, I noticed it. But again, I think it's mental. I think it was like a placebo effect, which hey, the placebo effect's real. So if you feel like you were better, like foam rolling, for example, if you feel better when you foam roll before you squat or deadlift or something, continue doing it.
Hmm.
If you feel better doing it, do it. But it may or not actually be helping you. I don't know.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think stuff like that, if you're foam rolling for say 5 minutes prior to the squats and you're like, oh, I think this helps, cool, do it.
Yeah.
But if you're foam rolling for 60 minutes and
Yeah.
then
If
doing
you're doing a full
squats,
body 60-minute for
you might need a different
you're probably
strategy.
doing more harm than good.
Something might be a little off here.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to do a lot more. Again, part of it when I was more deeper into powerlifting too, when I was training a lot heavier. But I think a lot of it was just mental. I thought I
Hmm.
needed to
Hmm.
do it. So,
Hmm.
whatever benefit I got, I would think it's safe to assume it's probably a little bit of a placebo effect, at least a
Hmm.
little bit.
Yeah.
You know. So are you
Uh,
agree with how we answered that or
yeah, yeah. Again, it's hard for me to give an over underrated statement for that just because so many people do it differently.
yeah,
But I do think warming up is important.
yeah.
But like you said, it kind of comes down to what works for each person because it might be true, it might be placebo, but if it gets the job done and you're
Mhm.
not injured, I guess it gets the job done.
But when you're doing your warm up sets, like with the bar, like how fast do you move the bar?
Normal speed, not an accelerated speed.
Have we
I
talked about this? I can't remember. Have we talked
No,
about this before?
no, but I've known and seen people that are basically like their bodies flopping off the bench because they're trying to like press it so fast.
Oh, I hate that. Yeah, I'm with you. I normal speed.
Normal
Don't try to
controlled
move it
speed.
super fast. You're
Yeah,
flopping around because it's
yeah,
like, yes, you can do that with the bar. As soon as you put weight on, you like what? Like, you
right.
know what I mean? Are you're trying to get what is it? Phase potentiation or whatever it is.
So it's the Golgi stretch reflex,
Yeah.
whatever those things are called.
Yeah, but with the bar,
Yeah, yeah.
you actually need load for that. Yeah. Yeah. I've always been like, okay, with your warm up sets, and here's another reason. I always think even when you get put weight on the bar too, it's extra practice. You
That's
know,
how I
these
view it. It's
reps are
like
extra practice. So
that's
don't
how I
don't
view
do
it.
the rep any different than you're going to do it with weight on there.
That's how I view it. It's like I'm gonna do this rep the same as I would do it with my heavier sets. Same
Hmm.
speed, same control. I'm not just doing it to do it and try to get through it quickly and think I'm accelerating the barbell so fast it's accomplishing something special.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Here's one that should be pretty easy for us. So this is the fifth one. Ice baths.
Overrated.
Oh yeah, 100% overrated.
Overrated. I told you I tried even the cryotherapy.
Hmm.
I went into the cryotherapy hoping it did something. Like I want this to do
Yeah.
something. And it didn't do anything.
When did you do that?
2018 maybe.
Yeah. Uh huh.
I bought a package on Groupon for a decent price. It was like I think I still have some visits left on that.
Yeah.
But I went into it wanting it to work. It wasn't like I'm like, oh, this isn't going to do anything. It might have been before 2018, but it was like when it was like kind of newer, kind of
Yeah.
like, oh,
Newish.
this is
Yeah.
kind of like cool. Like this sounds like it could do something. I did it a bunch of times. I'm like, but the person running it, they're like, oh, you're going to sleep better. Your joints are going to feel better. You're going to digest better. Like everything's going
Yep.
to be better. And you do it. And I did it, however, whatever the recommended schedule was. And I was like, I don't notice anything.
Yeah.
Not a single thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, I feel like the ice baths, all that stuff is just overrated.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the research, the only thing that there's really any evidence for it to do at all, and it's not even really great evidence, but it can reduce soreness. So delayed onset muscle soreness. There is some research that shows it can reduce soreness. So like for I always look at it this way. So like football players, like in the summer when they're doing training camp, when they're practicing with pads, hard twice or I don't think you do twice a day anymore, but at least every day. So they're probably lifting they're probably practicing in the morning, lifting in the afternoon, but they're practicing every day. If they jump into the ice bath, you're actually going to get two benefits. I'll talk to the second one later, but the first benefit, we'll just talk about soreness. If you actually have to practice every day and you're battling, you hear the kids in the background screaming, and you don't want to be sore, you'd probably see a benefit from doing an ice bath. Secondly, when you're training in the hot sun, there probably is a temperature regulation benefit too, to just bringing your internal core temperature down too. But for the average person who lifts in the gym, you're probably not seeing anything, and potentially even mitigating some adaptation to muscle growth too.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, for the average gym goer going to the gym or whatever, even like cold showers, all this stuff, I think it's overrated.
Well, the cold showers too. The thing about that is, so if there's not good research on cold baths, so you get into the bath up to your neck, so your whole body is immersed in water. What do you think a cold shower is going to do?
Mm-hmm. When if you read the research, sometimes it'll be like this might maybe in some way sort of kind of maybe might kind of little. It's like does it or does it not? Like if you have to make that far of a stretch, then it might decrease soreness or might do something. It probably doesn't.
Yeah.
Or at least not to a significant degree to where it makes it worth doing.
You always hear recovery thrown out. It's like, oh, it improves recovery. It's like, it doesn't improve recovery.
And then it's such a broad term.
Uh-huh.
It's like,
well, yeah, what do you mean by recovery? But by any metric of recovery, like, does it allow you to perform better the next day? Like, or, maintain performance or something other than against, anything else? If you compare it to other like active recovery, it's probably even worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Ice baths, cold showers, overrated.
Another one I think we could go either way on. Training to failure.
I would say underrated right now because
man, we think too much alike.
I know. That's why I said at least we were disagreeing about oatmeal and rice cakes last week. Yeah. But underrated because when the research came out stating basically you don't need to take every set to failure, I think that made people decrease their training intensity to where they're like nowhere near failure or not taking any sets to failure. And people forgot how to take sets to failure.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have answered this the exact opposite. I would say training to failure, overrated. You don't need to train to failure. Look at the research. Research shows as long as you're close to failure. And mind you, that's still the answer. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to take every set to failure. You know what I mean? But very important point. You're so far from failure that you've completely went the other direction. Now I think failure is underrated because people don't even know what failure training is. They don't even know what close to failure training is. Mm-hmm. People took the research that you didn't have to train to failure to mean, oh, well, we'll just, not even get close. And it's, of course, no one actually goes into it thinking that. Everyone thinks that they're training close to failure. But the problem is, especially the higher reps you get, the further from failure you get. Even if you're someone who's pretty educated on RPE and RIR, it's not very accurate. The higher the reps get and the further away from failure you get. So if you're trying to be 4 reps, if you're doing sets of 10 and you're like, yeah, I'm trying to be 3 to 4 reps away from failure, you're probably not that accurate.
So I always explain it to people this way. I say, if you're taking a set to failure or close to failure, you take it to the point where you complete like one really hard rep and you're like, I don't know if I could do another rep, so I'm better off just stopping the set here. Mm-hmm. And then like do like another set like that and then take the last set, maybe you go to the point to where you reach failure. I don't like taking the set to the point to where you need assistance to complete reps, to like force reps. I think that's too far.
That's too far.
Yep. But if you get to the point to where, like, let's say you're doing dumbbell shoulder press and the last rep, you're just really struggling and shaking your high. You're like, oh, cool. But if you get to the point, you're like, oh, I need help. And you have someone help you, like, that's too much. Yep. That's too far.
Well, that brings up a good point. Like, if your rep speed never slows down at all, you're not close to failure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you see some people like that. Like, the first rep and the last rep was like the same speed. Like, oh, I'm done.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Should be some sort of mechanical change.
Yeah. At least a little bit.
Yeah. But that doesn't, I do think we're you start approaching that area to where bad things can happen is when your form breaks down so much
Yeah.
that something can go
Yeah. I'm
wrong.
not saying form breakdown.
Yeah.
I'm saying just the rep speed changes.
Yep. No, I agree with that. But like we were saying, I think people have gone so far away from training the failure, they don't do it at all anymore. When there still needs to be some failure. But
And especially when we're talking like isolation movements where there's very little downside
yeah,
to training to
yeah,
failure. And even let's say, there was some type of issue for creating more fatigue than you need, but when you're talking about the like smaller isolation exercises, I mean, how much fatigue are you really going to get on, a hammer curl?
right. And like you said, on a hammer curl, even if your form starts to break down, you just put the dumbbell down. It's
Yeah,
not like
you're
you're
not
in a
going to get hurt.
compromised position where the dumbbell is going to fall on your head or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying you should take every single back squat to the point of, momentary failure where you need forced reps. And, that's different than doing a hammer curl until you can't do another full rep.
Yeah, hammer curl, lat pull down,
Yeah.
stuff like that. You're fine. But
Yeah.
no, I do think people need to push themselves a little harder during training.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean having someone help you do three force reps when your form breaks down.
Exactly.